Welcome to our channel, where we explore the timeless wisdom of Vedic traditions. Today, we're examining a fascinating yet controversial aspect of Vedic astrology, the use of gemstones as planetary remedies. In today's astrological marketplace, gemstones are routinely prescribed as powerful remedies for planetary afflictions. A weak Jupiter? Wear yellow sapphire. Troubled by Saturn? Try blue sapphire. This approach has become so commonplace that the gemstone remedy business generates millions in revenue annually. But what if I told you that the ancient Vedic texts contain surprisingly limited references to this practice, that the detailed gemstone prescriptions we see today have more recent origins than most practitioners acknowledge, and that the traditional approach to gemstones was far more nuanced and complex than simply matching stones to planets? Today, we'll dive deep into what the Shastras actually say about gemstones, explore the historical development of gemstone remedies, and uncover some hidden knowledge about how these precious stones were traditionally understood and utilized. Visit AustriaViennaPuja.com for more resources on authentic Vedic traditions. The use of gemstones in India dates back thousands of years, with evidence from archaeological sites showing their value for both ornamental and ritual purposes. But their systematic classification and testing emerged as a distinct science called Ratna Pariksha. As mentioned in Kautilya's Arthashastra, around 300 BCE, Ratna Pariksha was primarily used by the Kosadhyaksha, or Superintendent of Treasury, to control the trade of pearls, diamonds, and other valuable gems. This reveals something important. Gemstones were initially precious commodities, requiring expert evaluation rather than primarily astrological tools. The earliest comprehensive texts on gemology, like the Ratna Pariksha attributed to Buddha Bhatt, classified gems into Maharatna, great gems, and Uparatna, secondary gems. This classification was based on their physical properties, rarity, and value, not exclusively on planetary connections. In temple traditions across India, particularly in South India, gemstones adorn deity images for specific ceremonies, showing their sacred status. However, their widespread use as personal planetary remedies appears to have developed gradually over centuries, rather than being a core feature of the earliest astrological practices. This historical context is crucial because it helps us understand that gemstone recommendations have evolved significantly over time, with modern practices sometimes diverging from traditional applications. Let's examine what the classical texts of Vedic astrology actually say about gemstones. The most surprising revelation is how little the foundational texts mention about gemstone remedies compared to their prominence in modern practice. Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, considered the most authoritative text of Vedic astrology, contains remarkably few detailed instructions about gemstone remedies. While it extensively covers planetary characteristics, yogas, combinations, dashas, periods, and various predictive techniques, it lacks the elaborate gemstone prescriptions we see today. The Brihat Samhita by Varahamihira, 6th century CE, does discuss gemstones in more detail, particularly their qualities, defects, and testing methods. However, even here, the focus is more on gemological knowledge than specific astrological applications. When gemstones are mentioned in relation to planets in early texts, it's often in the context of the Navaratna, the 9 gems associated with the 9 planets, as a general correspondence, rather than as personalized remedies based on birth charts. The significant development of detailed gemstone prescriptions seems to have occurred in medieval and later commentaries and derivative works, which expanded upon the brief mentions in earlier texts. This textual evidence raises important questions. If gemstone remedies were as central to Vedic astrology as they're presented today, why aren't they more prominently featured in the root texts? Could it be that they were considered advanced knowledge, transmitted orally? Or is it possible that their current prominence represents a later development in astrological practice? The Navaratna, or 9 gems, represents the most established traditional connection between gemstones and planets in Vedic culture. According to texts like the Brihat Samhita and as cited in the Wisdom Lib reference, these 9 gems are associated with the 9 planets as follows: ruby, Manikya, for the sun; pearl, Mukta, for the moon; red coral, Pravala, for Mars; emerald, Marakata, for Mercury; yellow sapphire, Pushparaga, for Jupiter; diamond, Hiraka, for Venus; blue sapphire, Nilamani, for Saturn; hessonite garnet, Gometa, for Rahu, Cat's Eye, Vaidurya for Ketu. The Navaratna was traditionally set in a specific arrangement in jewelry, with the ruby at the center representing the sun, surrounded by the other 8 gems. This arrangement was believed to create a harmonious balance of planetary energies. Kings and temples often used Navaratna ornaments not as personal remedies but as symbols of cosmic completeness and divine protection. The arrangement was considered sacred in itself, representing the celestial body's harmonious interaction. What's particularly noteworthy is that traditional texts emphasize the quality, purity, and proper setting of these gems far more than individualized prescriptions based on birth charts. The Brihat Samhita, for instance, devotes considerable attention to identifying genuine gems and their defects, stating that gems of inferior quality are abortive for each of these purposes, including health benefits and offerings to deities. This suggests that the Navaratna tradition was more about cosmic symbolism and general auspiciousness, rather than the targeted remedial approach we see today. The contemporary practice of prescribing gemstones as personalized remedies represents a significant evolution, some might say departure, from traditional approaches. Today, astrologers routinely recommend specific gemstones based on factors like the position and strength of planets in the birth chart, ongoing planetary periods, dashas, transits and their effects, and specific problems or areas of life needing improvement. This highly individualized approach, while potentially beneficial, differs from the more general symbolic use of gems in traditional practices. The commercialization of astrological gemstones has created a massive industry. As noted in Search Result 17, gemstones are marketed for everything from career success to relationship harmony, with specific claims about their effects on different life areas. Modern astrologers often prescribe gemstones as the primary remedy for planetary afflictions, sometimes at the expense of other traditional remedies like mantras, charity, or lifestyle adjustments that were equally or more emphasized in classical texts. What's particularly concerning is the emphasis on expensive, high-quality gems, when many traditional texts suggest that proper spiritual intention and ritual purification were as important as the material value of the stone itself. This shift raises important questions about the commercialization of spiritual practices and whether modern recommendations are always grounded in authentic tradition or sometimes influenced by commercial interests. From a scientific perspective, gemstones possess unique physical properties that might explain their traditional use as conduits of cosmic energy. Gems have distinct crystalline structures that vibrate at specific frequencies. These vibrations interact with light, causing the characteristic colors we associate with different stones. Some proponents suggest these vibrational properties allow gems to interact with human electromagnetic fields. Modern gemstone therapy often draws on concepts like resonance and energy transmission, suggesting that gems can absorb, amplify, and transmit specific energies associated with their planetary counterparts. While skeptics point to a lack of scientific studies confirming these effects beyond placebo, advocates argue that traditional knowledge often precedes scientific verification by centuries. The absence of evidence, they suggest, is not evidence of absence. Some practitioners point to concepts from quantum physics, suggesting that gems might function as information transducers between cosmic and human energy fields. However, it's important to maintain a balanced perspective between traditional claims and verified scientific understanding. What's particularly interesting is that traditional texts like the Brihat Samhita describe methods for testing and verifying gem properties that align with both spiritual and material considerations, suggesting an integrated approach that valued both objective and subjective dimensions of gemstone efficacy. If we look at what the Shastras actually prescribe regarding gemstone use, we find a far more nuanced approach than simply purchasing and wearing a stone. Traditional texts emphasize several key elements that are often overlooked in modern practice. First, purification and energization, prana pratishtha of the gemstone is essential. According to the Wisdom Lib text, gems need to be properly purified before use. This might involve immersing them in specific liquids, exposing them to sunlight or moonlight, or performing mantras to infuse them with appropriate energy. Second, the setting and metal are crucial. Each planet has an associated metal that should ideally be used to set its gemstone. For instance, gold for solar stones like ruby, silver for lunar stones like pearl. Third, the finger on which the stone is worn matters significantly. According to search result 20, blue sapphire works only when worn correctly on the middle finger of the right hand. Different fingers correspond to different planetary energies. Fourth, timing is vital. Gemstones should ideally be worn during auspicious times when the governing planet is strong. Wearing a stone during the planet's weak periods could potentially amplify negative rather than positive effects. Fifth, mantras and intention play a critical role. Many traditional texts suggest that the gem's power is activated through specific mantras and the wearer's conscious intention. Beyond the common knowledge about gemstones lies a realm of more esoteric applications, preserved in specialized texts and lineage-based oral traditions. One of the most profound yet little discussed aspects of traditional gemstone use is Rasa Shastra, the Ayurvedic science of preparing medicines using purified mineral substances. Gem basma's incredibly fine ash preparations of gemstones were used medicinally for specific health conditions based on their planetary correspondences. Another hidden aspect is the use of gems in meditation practices. Certain tantric traditions prescribe meditation while holding specific gems to facilitate connection with planetary deities or to awaken specific energies within the subtle body. Temple traditions across India maintain specialized knowledge about using gems for deity worship. Certain ceremonies require specific gems to be present during rituals to create the appropriate energetic environment for invoking planetary deities. Perhaps most fascinatingly, some traditional texts mention the practice of gemancy, divination using gemstones, where the behavior of gems in water or their interaction with light was used to forecast events or answer specific questions. The Navaratna Samuccaya, a 13th century alchemical text, describes methods for killing, transforming gems to release their spiritual essence while neutralizing potentially harmful physical properties, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of both the benefits and risks of gemstone use. These hidden aspects suggest that traditional gemstone knowledge was far more complex and nuanced than the simplified planetary remedy system commonly presented today. As we've explored today, the relationship between gemstones and astrology in the Vedic tradition is both profound and complex, with significant differences between traditional approaches and modern practices. The classical texts certainly acknowledge connections between gemstones and planets, particularly in the Navaratna tradition. However, they place greater emphasis on gem quality, proper testing, purification rituals, and symbolic arrangements than on personalized remedial prescriptions based on birth charts. The evolution toward today's highly individualized gemstone recommendations appears to be a later development, expanding upon rather than directly reflecting the earliest astrological teachings. This doesn't necessarily invalidate modern practices, but it invites us to approach them with greater awareness and discernment. Perhaps the most balanced approach is first, study what the original texts actually say, rather than relying solely on contemporary interpretations. Second, consider the full range of traditional remedies, including mantras, charitable acts, and spiritual practices, rather than focusing exclusively on gemstones. Third, if choosing to use gemstones, approach them with the care, purification, and ritual context that traditional texts prescribe, rather than treating them as simple accessories. Fourth, maintain a healthy skepticism toward purely commercial claims about gemstone effects, while remaining open to their potential benefits when used appropriately. The gemstone tradition, properly understood, represents a fascinating bridge between material and spiritual dimensions of existence, between the cosmic energies of the planets and the human experience they influence. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of gemstones in Vedic astrology. For more in-depth resources on authentic Vedic traditions, visit AustriaViennaPuja.com.